So after my last video, I was flooded. I had people in my inbox, in my DMs, people were angry, people were scared. I had the government checking in on me. Just kidding. But I have been talking a lot to people but what did they actually sign off on? What are the contracts? What are the actual terms of the agreement? So I did what any unhinged person on a mission would do, and I went and I pulled every document that I could possibly get my hands on. I found the agreement between MIDA and Kevin O'Leary, the agreement between MIDA and Box Elder County, the governor's office, all of it, and I read it all. I have been up until like 1 a.m. most nights. I am going to show you every piece of what I found, because I don't want anybody in the dark here. I want you to be able to go out into the world and have an intellectual conversation by seeing all of the evidence. If you haven't watched part 1, go watch it. I'm not going to rehash anything. We're moving forward. Let's go. The first thing I want to show you, and this isn't a super important detail, but I do want you to be well informed about what we're talking about here. MIDA is calling the project Stratos, right? That's what we've been referring to this entire time. But Kevin O'Leary, in his own words and in the agreement here with MIDA, he calls it Wonder Valley. I think that's also the name of his data center in Alberta, Canada. So I don't know why he's calling them both Wonder Valley. Keep in mind, it's all the same thing. Alright, now in part 1, I threw out the number 40,000 acres, right? Everybody's talking about it, it's triple the size of Manhattan, we get it. And I do want to be very clear that the 40,000 acres is not for one massive building, okay? The 40,000 acres is a lot of land, and Kevin O'Leary himself says they're probably not going to use all of it. They're going to have hotels and the power generation plant itself, so there's going to be a lot of stuff on this complex. However, I also threw out the number 9 gigawatts. Now, 9 gigawatts of power is what's projected to come out of the data center at full build-out. And I had to look this up here because I have no frame of reference for this. I'm not in tech. If you told me that I used 9 gigawatts of power in a month, I wouldn't believe you. Turns out I was very, very wrong. 9 gigawatts of power is enough to power 6 to 7 million American homes in a year. So that's a lot of power that we're talking about. But it's not like this data center is going to be built in a couple years and immediately start producing 9 gigawatts. This project will be built in phases, and you can see that here. So all of the big, scary numbers, that is going to be about 10 years from now. However, they will be starting on phase 1. Phase 1 is projected, actually contracted, to reach 3 gigawatts of power. So they have to build the power generation plant. They have to build the data center itself. They have to be able, by the end of 5 years, to produce 3 gigawatts of power. And phase 1, in Kevin O'Leary's own words, is meant to kind of show the American people how this is all going to work. Make sure that nobody's afraid before they continue with building out the rest of the project. But I do want to be very crystal clear that this phase 1 in 5 years, that's not a promise, that's not a projection, it's a contractual obligation that Kevin O'Leary has to MIDA in order to build this in 5 years. So it's a contractual obligation with a running clock. And I'm gonna be watching. I also do just want to let you know that it's not Kevin O'Leary himself that will be developing this. We're talking about a development company that he created under his name in order to go out and build this project. And that company is called O'Leary Digital Utah, LLC. Okay. So here's where I really need you to pay attention, because there aren't really many people talking about this part. In part 1, I told you that MIDA essentially acts like its own government, but I really want to show you via evidence how deep that really goes. Based on the Utah MIDA Act, and I'm going to read this directly because I want you to hear the actual language, MIDA has exclusive police power within a project area to the same extent as though the authority were a municipality. So what does that mean? That means that within the project area that MIDA now has control of, Box Elder County's laws, they don't apply. County zoning laws, They don't apply. MIDA is the government here, full stop. And just remember, who chairs MIDA? J. Stewart Adams, the Utah State Senate President, arguably the most powerful legislative position in the state. So he's the one that signed both the agreement with O'Leary and he signed the tax that MIDA will be putting on the energy in the project. I'm not here to tell you whether that's moral or immoral. What I am telling you is that this is legal due to the Utah Code. But the code was put in practice in 2007, so arguably they probably couldn't have even known that MIDA would use the power for something like this. I'm not going to tell you what to think. You're very smart. You can come to your own conclusion, but I'm just telling you that that is how the structure is. But hold on. Because MIDA won't be acting alone, right? They will be creating a development review committee that can actually have oversight on the project. So everything will be fine, right? Well, let me tell you about this oversight committee. Because there will be 8 people on the committee, one of which will be the MIDA executive director, okay? Appointed by MIDA, okay? The other 7 people will be recommended by Box Elder County. Perfect! Except for the fact that MIDA will have the final say on whether or not they get appointed. And if Box Elder County doesn't give them the names within 30 days, then MIDA can pick whoever they want to be on the review committee. I don't know what more to tell you to show you that this is a closed-loop system, that all of this is a front. They're trying to come off as if they're going through the normal government process, everything is legal. They aren't going through the government process. But the people who are approving the government process are themselves. They answer to themselves. They're their own government in their own right. And so, once again, I am mostly concerned about the accountability piece. Because if all of the promises go according to plan, then great. But if they don't, there is nobody but themselves to stop them. So that's what I'm concerned about. But like I said, if everything goes according to plan, then we have nothing to worry about, right? So let's actually walk through all of the promises that they have made. Because like I said in the last video, MIDA is promising the world when it comes to this new data center, the new technology. So let's go through not just what MIDA and Kevin O'Leary are saying, but what they are actually contractually obligated to provide as part of this project. Listen up, we're gonna go a little bit quickly, okay? I made this little document to show you everything that they are promising. We're gonna go through it one by one. Number 1, they are promising at least, at the bare minimum, 2,000 jobs at full build-out. That's permanent jobs. What they're saying is that this is a bare minimum. And what they're actually projecting is about 10,000 jobs. 2,000 jobs, permanent jobs, at full build-out is what they're actually contractually obligated to produce. Number 2, $30 million to Box Elder County during the early phases, up to $108 million to the county at full build-out. And we wonder why they approved it. $108 million is quite the incentive to approve a project. Number 3, $16 million up front, and that will be paid out in 3 payments of $5.4 million. And that will be starting within 30 days of them getting a building permit. Number 4, closed-loop cooling only. They're not allowed to do any evaporative cooling or even have any cooling towers. That's not just a promise, that is under contract between MIDA and Box Elder County. Now again, who's going to hold them accountable and what are the consequences going to be if they don't actually hold to that? I don't know, because there was nothing in the interlocal agreement about what the consequences would be for any violations. I think that would have been a very key piece to put into a contract. Every contract that I've ever seen or signed has had consequences for if either party violates the contract. They can promise whatever they want to, but at the end of the day, if there's no consequences, I mean, you can do the math, honestly. Number 5, noise limits. They are required to have 55 decibels or less during the day of noise and 45 or less at night. That will be measured at the nearest home outside the project. Number 6, dark sky compliance. Every building permit, every site plan, they are going to have to follow dark sky laws in the area. Number 7, they're not going to be allowed to have any permanent housing on the property ever. Number 8, they will only be allowed to have 150 hotel rooms total on the property. And lastly, and I promise I'm not making this up, they will be required to provide a fire truck to the county if any of the buildings are above 35 feet, because a normal fire truck can't go that high. So they're going to have to donate a fire truck that can actually reach that high to the county every 10 years. I don't know who negotiated that, but honestly, good for them. I don't even know where you find a fire truck to donate, but again, good for them. Alright, so these are all of the real promises, the contractual obligations that they're going to be held to. By who? I don't know. I just think if you don't have any consequences written into the contract, then tech giants and businessmen and even people in the government will take any amount of leeway that you give them. So if you don't have any consequences, if you don't have anybody to hold them accountable, then they are going to push. And I think that that could be a real problem for us, for the county, for the people of Utah. Alright, now I want to talk about how the money will actually be flowing. Because you know me, I'm going to do one thing, it will be following the money. Let me show you what I found, because it's not really what I expected. So the county's guaranteed minimum benefit, it's not actually $30 million. It's actually, more specifically, $10,000 per megawatt of capacity per year. That's the contractual floor. The $30 million figure is what you get after phase 1 when they reach 3 gigawatts of power. But if they produce less, then the county will get less. And that's why they're required to give them $16 million upfront to cover that gap of them not producing 3 gigawatts. But here's the part that made me really concerned. O'Leary's data centers, they don't pay normal property taxes. Did we think that they would? No. They actually pay something called LOC payments, letters of completion payments. And they pay them at 1.2% of assessed value. And of that, computer equipment taxes are reimbursed to O'Leary. Real property taxes above the normal county rate are also reimbursed. And of what's left after that, 80% goes back to O'Leary. 20% goes to MIDA. The idea is that the developer funds the project through the recycled tax money. That's how it works. But I do want you to understand that when we say O'Leary is funding the project, he's not fronting all of the capital. He's funding the project through recycled tax money. Okay, let's get into the water. Because in part 1, I didn't have as much detail on the water issue as I do now. The official position from MIDA and Kevin O'Leary is that the data center is going to actually use less water than the agricultural land is currently using. However, they're also saying that at minimum they're going to use at least 3,000 acre-feet of water. Let's look at the actual water applications that they have submitted, say. On March 25th, they submitted a water rights application to change the water from its current agricultural use to now being used for the data center project. That's normal, that's the legal required process. However, the application itself has 2 very interesting things that I want you to pay attention to. Number 1, they are applying for 1,900 acre-feet of water. We can assume that 1,900 acre-feet of water is what exists on the land. They're applying for 100% of that water to now be used for the data center. However, based off of their own words, that's 1,100 acre-feet missing that they're going to need for the data center. So we can also assume that this is not going to be the only application submitted. This plot of land is not the only plot of land that water exists on. So we're likely going to see applications for every plot of land and their water use. So they're going to want to use all of the water that's available to them. And the county might come back and say, we're only going to give you a portion of what you applied for, right? So they might not even get 1,900 feet. So we should be on the lookout for more applications, right? Now the other thing I want you to pay attention to is who made the application. It wasn't Kevin O'Leary, it wasn't his company, it wasn't Mida. It was actually the person that owns the land. More specifically, the company that owns the land. And that company is called RH Ranch. Now, I have looked into this, and I have actually built out an entire family tree for who owns the land and how they're connected. We're going to get into that in another video because it's too much to put here. But be on the lookout for that. So, on March 25th, RH Ranch submits this application for the water rights. Now, 4,000 people protested. I don't know if they got scared or if they thought that the county would get scared, but they ended up withdrawing the entire application on May 6th. Seems like a good thing, right? We kind of won. Except for the fact that they're just going to reapply. And they're going to have more applications from more companies on more land. We're never going to be able to stop this project with protests. The most we can hope for is that we pause it long enough for them to put in more regulations. But guess what they did? After submitting this application on April 28th, they also submitted another application. And this one was a lot harder to find because it wasn't under the same name. It was actually under a different company, and this company also owns land. So we can see that they are going about this in the way that we thought. They're going to use the company that owns the land to submit an application for whatever water that they have to be changed to be used for the data center. They also withdrew that application after receiving hundreds of protests. I have no question on whether or not they're going to resubmit these applications. Absolutely they will. It's only a matter of time. I do think that it'll get harder and harder to find because we're going to have the list of all of the names of people that own the land, and we're going to have to continuously search that up, find the applications, protest, do what we can. It's going to be a never-ending cycle, and ultimately we're never going to be able to stop the project. That's truly my belief, unfortunately. Now, the Department of Environmental Quality did write a letter on the day that the county approved the project, May 4th, and they did say, okay, you did approve this, but here are all of the things that still need to happen. They need to submit a notice of intent to the Department of Environmental Quality. They need to do this, they need to do that. That's great, but they still have hoops that they have to jump through. It will slow them down. However, I keep coming back to this idea of if there's no consequences written into the contracts, if there's nobody to hold them accountable, then you can say whatever you want. You can tell them the hoops they have to jump through. But if they don't jump through them, then there's nothing to hold them accountable. There are no consequences. It's all a moot point. What I really think needs to happen is that the government needs to stall the process long enough that they can put in regulations. Maybe a dissolution of Mida needs to happen. And I can tell you that people are fighting for that right now. People are claiming that Mida is actually violating its own act. So maybe we need to look at that avenue. Maybe we need to look at putting more regulations into place, rethinking the government's contracts with them, putting in some consequences. I don't know. What I do know is that if there are loopholes, if there is leeway, then Mida and the businessmen behind this are going to take advantage of everything that they possibly can. So I just think that we shouldn't have given them any leeway to begin with. But here we are. At this point, they have not submitted any more applications for water rights. As far as I know, they haven't submitted applications for permits or anything like that. But we do need to keep an eye out, and we do need to do everything that we can to petition the government to get more involved. So that's where we are. We have the 30-year agreements, we have the contractual agreements signed by Kevin O'Leary, by Mida, by Box Elder County. We have zero accountability, we have zero consequences, and that's what I'm most concerned about. So there is a lot more where this came from. I will be digging into Mida. I will be digging into RH Ranch and the landowners. This is an ongoing investigation. My inbox is open if you have any tips. This is not my full-time job, but I am doing my best. I don't have all the answers, but you best believe that I will be pulling on every thread until I do. If it's out there, I will find it. I will see you in the next one. Bye.